Dungeons and Dragons Adventurer. Issue 11. Yep, so this is the final issue in the first adventure line. So this will have our last encounter for Adventure 1. Now, there's a lot of stuff to do with mummies. Let's take a look. Before we get to the mummies and the monsters of the realms, everything else, we get another dice tin. Because you can never have too many tins of dice. If I could even get to the dice. There we go. We go on today's tin of dice. Some nice black and gold looking things. Very nice, but very plain and boring compared to some recent ones. So anyway then, let's move on with the magazine. So today we're going to look at food and drink and how to pay for it. We're going to look about monsters. It's a two-parter, but I didn't realise it was going to be a two-parter in the DM section. I thought it was going to be like some lore or something. So we get to look at the monsters from the DM point of view, which is very nice. We're going to see our final background of the 4 original backgrounds with the Acolyte to round it off. Possibly that means next issue we'll have Folk Hero, just because I know I've got one of them on the character sheet too. And some other stuff, including a bit about mummies. And yeah, the 11th issue of Dungeons & Dragons Adventure comes with a set of fantastic black and gold dice along with a dice tin. Use them as an alternative to the other dice in your collection or give them to one of your fellow players to use in the game. Well, anyway, moving on. We'll start with our sage advice. Temporary and maximum hit points. Obviously, maximum hit points is your maximum hit points. Let's find out what temporary stuff is. As we can see, hit point maximum is hit point maximum. You can't exceed it. But certain spells and features can increase your hit point total beyond the hit point maximum. Although the example they use there about casting aid increases your hit points and your hit point maximum. So it goes above your hit point maximum by setting a new maximum, not including above a maximum. So I'm not sure unless spells and features increase it beyond your maximum by increasing your maximum. That's kind of a bit vague in how they use that example there. Although we move on to temporary hit points, which is increasing past the maximum, but only temporarily. They are just temporary extra damage, and you'll soak up damage in your temporary hit points before you actually take damage. But you can't have multiple forms of temporary hit points, and eventually they might fade away if they're time sensitive, and they can't restore them to consciousness or stabilize them at 0 below. Now let's talk about treasure. You'll get many forms of treasure. Coins, gems, paintings, pendants, magical items. Just to name a few. What should you do with all these different types of treasure? Buy, sell, equip. That's basically what this whole thing is. Most people will buy anything of value for some sort of money. You might want to wait for the right buyer though, like with some pieces of art. Or you might want to wait for the right time to use it. Some gemstones you could sell, or you could use them to fashion them into jewellery or fashion statements maybe. Outfits. Once you've sold all your treasure, it's now time to use it to get food and drink. And now we go into more details about rations than we did before, especially to do with how much food and drink you need per day, what happens if you don't have enough, you can go half rations, half drink, and how if you can't meet your quotas, you're going to start building up exhaustion levels. 5 silver pieces a day is all you need for your daily sustenance of rations too. And briefly, just cover the various menus you'll get there, the prices for your cost of living for anything you want to purchase, food and drink wise. Another thing you can buy for 1 gold piece is traps for hunting or fishing tackles, so you can make and hunt your own food and forage around in the wilderness. And culinary magic! It's just a bit about some classes who can detect poison disease and some of them who can also cure it as well, or purify it. This looks like a fun section over here, managing monsters, or creatures as they should be known. Monsters is just how humanoids describe them. But apparently there's 14 different types to be found. And there's also mention now of the monster manual, which is probably where most of this information comes from. I'm assuming previous information has just been from the player's guide or player's manual or whatever it's called. And also, maybe, I believe this might be the first actual source book, stroke other book that's been mentioned in the magazine so far. I could be wrong, I'll have to double check. So the creature types are aberrations, giants, undead, monstrosities, beasts, dragons, plants, oozes, fae, celestials, fiends, elementals, constructs. That's only 13. It does mention humanoids in the giants bit, so maybe humanoids is the 4th category of creature, which would make sense. It's just not highlighted in red. Maybe we'll get a humanoid section later, or maybe there's no need to mention them. Part 2 of the Managing Monsters here, which is in the same magazine across the page, so it's not that far away. But this looks like it's going to talk about stat blocks, finally. Explain them a little bit more maybe, except there's no actual stat block featured here. A lot of text, which is a missed opportunity, possibly. Either way, this does explain all the stuff about the stat block. It would have just been nice to have a visual aid. Most of the bits here covered you already knew. It does, the last paragraph's probably the most newest important information. It explains a little bit about challenge rating for creatures, but we'll talk about that later. Special traits the monster might have. We'll talk about those later too. And the last section of the stat block is the monster's actions, which they must spend an action to use, addition to the list of actions such as dash or hide that are available to everyone. And I need to take a note of that because I didn't realise monsters could dash or hide, so all I've been doing is they've just been doing combat and just constantly doing their actions. Or doing hiding and stuff like that when it's part of an action they can do. So I better get myself a list of actions for everyone. There might be one in the Dungeon Master screen actually, I better check that. If I just flip inside the lovely Dungeon Master screen, it does in fact have a list of actions in combat. So I need to read over that again, just to remind myself. Moving on from the monsters and thinking about combat, we're going to now look at the Acolytes. They're D&D's holiest background according to this info blog. The Acolyte background means your pre-adventuring life was defined by holy service and devotion. And there's quite a few classes here who could be Acolytes. Some make sense on others, like Clerics are pretty much always going to be Acolytes, but Acolytes are not always Clerics. Your benefits though, you're going to be proficient in the religion skill and also the insight, and you get 2 extra languages. Consider here what culture is the most likely number among your deities worshippers. And the Shelter of the Faithful feature. I think that must be discussed over the page. And also because of your expert in your rights and your rules, you can get some benefits for other people who follow your deity, such as some free healing, spell components, assistance, and so forth. So the Shelter of the Faithful feature isn't actually mentioned over there, but it says your benefits. So unless this bottom bit about your free healing and all you need, that might be the Shelter of the Faithful feature they're on about. Because, if we look here, our nice Acolyte Cleric doesn't have it listed on the features. Hopefully they'll discuss it at some point, or it is just that, but then that's not listed here anyway. Maybe it's an advanced feature that will pop up at some point. Although I'm not sure, because I thought backgrounds are just backgrounds, so you can't really get more from them. There's a bit of information how to role play it anyway. And the starting point is to make sure you've established your religious nature and the deity that you follow. Lore time, beginning with Yartar. It's a northern town, and I think now we've started to move off our map, because north of Neverwinter we kind of get to nothing. The crags and the forest. And none of the features on my map are actually here. A crossroads with the Evermore Way, linking to Tribor and Silvery Moon on the fork of the Surbine and the Desserin. The Laughing Flow Pass is nearby. None of that's on my map, so now we're moving slightly further away, which makes sense because we're coming to the end of the first adventure arc. But it's a place known for fishing industry and its barge building, which makes sense considering how much water it's adjacent to. A bit more about Yartar, including they have a hiring fair and notable locations in the town. It's a shame they haven't given us a town map like they did with Phandalin. But I can say I had it wrong, so I was like, oh, it's a northern town. I thought it was north from here, but it's not. It's actually east, because here's Yartar, and there's, in the background it's got a map similar to the actual map I've got. And if you look just behind this guy's head, you can kind of see where the Cryptogarden Forest should be. Which we can see here is right on the very bottom right edge of our map, next to the Sword Mountains. Which means Yartar, we have to go off the map to the east to find it. Mummies alive. Next category of monsters, mummies. I'm assuming somewhere we're going to have some talk of mummy rot, which is here, and also undead alchemy, which is one of the few things I vaguely know about mummies. Touch them, you're going to rot away. Will they give us exact details? Not really about getting rid of the mummy's rot curse, although I'm pretty sure cure disease is something I've read that can do it, but more about ending the actual curse of being a mummy. Although rarely will you actually fix the mummy's curse, and more often than not, just send them back to sleep. And interesting to know, mummies may actually speak in raspberry dusting tones. Something I wouldn't want to speak to be perfectly honest. Now the question is, will we find any mummies in Cat's Cradle? As before, this is the DM's eyes only. It's an adventure for the players to run. If you're planning on running it, use the chapters below to skip. Otherwise, we're going to have a look at it. So the encounters basically you all just hide as guards for a private auction of 2 artifacts. Yeah, there's going to be mummies. Unearthed from the island nation east of the coast, so that won't be on the map. Also among these treasures is the Star of Star of Khonshu. Yeah, it's definitely going to have mummies in there talking about tombs and other things. So we set the scene. The adventurers have to speak with Halia Thornton, Guildmaster of the Miners' Exchange. It's hosting a private auction. She wants to hire the adventurers as guards. 50 gold pieces to work. If they accept, they provide security during the day, during the night, but they can't bid on the items in the auction. If they accept, so technically does that mean the adventurer just goes, no, sit at the auction, not be able to afford anything because it's been really expensive, and then that's that, that's encounter done. Yeah, could be the great way to get through it, just go, nah, we're good, go home. Man, if it's like that, I could breeze through some of these encounters here. Either way, we've just got some events that are going to go on, rude customers, fighting customers, angry customers. And eventually the auction finishes and it's the night duty time. Now we've got the real crux of the adventure, the night time. So you're going to have some bandits breaking in trying to steal stuff. You eventually have to fight the bandits. During all the commotion, you're also going to knock over some urns with some zombie cats inside. They're all going to attack you. And if you don't manage to defeat them, the zombie's going to come after you too when he reawakens. So completing the adventure can end in different ways. If you drive with the bandits and prevent the mummy, you get 50 gold. If you identify a Glimreal as a mastermind, you get 100. Is that the only 2 ways it can end? So what if, well, obviously you can all die, but it doesn't really say what happens if you don't prevent the mummy from awaking, but you also don't manage to identify Glimreal. If the bandits will try and escape and you can capture them. But what happens if your party's really cruel and just slaughters them all? You've got no information, you don't defeat the cats in time, you have to fight the zombie as well, you destroy the zombie if you don't die. I guess that means you run away. They haven't really dealt with that here. Well, actually, I guess that's what role-playing's for, isn't it? And as I think this is the final adventure in Encounter 1, maybe we're going to leave Phandalin soon, so you might not have to worry about upsetting everyone by vanishing in the night. And we're just finishing with our stat blocks. So we've got the bandits. Have we had bandits before? The answer to that, yes, we did in Encounter 4, when they attacked the vampire wagon. But now it's, unlike the goblins, who are in 2 issues and have 2 different sets of artwork, these have got the exact same art for both. And the whole stat block's the same, except for the actions. They used to have a longbow, they've changed it for a light crossbow. Everything else though is exactly the same. So maybe longbows and light crossbows are identical, maybe one of these are wrong, I'm not sure at the moment. So going back to the weapons table, we can see that yes, the light crossbow is correct. That's exactly what the stats say on the sheet. At the bottom though, the longbow, it's got a range of 150 and 600. So that longbow there was actually a light crossbow. Either they got the name wrong or the range wrong, but seeing as this guy's got a light crossbow, that longbow's probably wrong. Didn't spot it at the time, spotted it now. Maybe I need to go back through all the issues and closely examine everything in the stat blocks. Anyway, back to the adventure at hand. So the other thing I've noticed is the zombie cats here. For some reason it says saving throws wisdom +0. I'm not really sure, I don't get that because they already have a +0 on wisdom. So I don't know why they've got a separate thing saying wisdom +0 saving throws. I've had a quick look and I've only found 1 monster previously where they've had a saving throws in their stat block, and it was because the saving throws are different. And we actually get one in this issue as well with the mummy. So you can see saving throws wisdom +2 when their wisdom bonus is +0. So I don't know why that's been included when it's the same, unless they've just included that there because they also include it on the mummy, but it's not different. Again, I'm not sure. Once I know more about zombie cats or actual zombies, I might understand. And the only thing I can think of looking at this mummy is actually the mummy is very powerful, so if the adventurers wake it up, there's a good chance they might actually not survive unless they run away. We're looking at all the stats it's got. And if it did want to speak, it's going to speak Ancient Mohorandi. So no one's going to speak that for certain. Yeah, it's got a nice rotting fist with 20 damage, unless you're immune to a necrotic. And it will also curse you with Mummy Rot. And there we get our Mummy Rot details. And then we have a Dreadful Glare as well, which can frighten characters and even paralyse them. If you do succeed, you do become immune for 24 hours, unless it's from a Mummy Lord. This isn't a Mummy Lord as far as I'm aware. So you are immune from this, but I'm sure we will cover Mummy Lords eventually. But yeah, that was issue 11, so I've got a few questions now from some of the things. So I might have a little read up and see if it's something I've missed in previous issues, or something I can read about online or so. Or maybe it'll get answered in future issues, such as issue 12, which will be coming up. And as you can see, this has got quite a nice spell book, so I can't wait to have a look at that. Dragonborns, another new species. And you can see the art's different, so we're definitely moving on to the next adventure arc. So I don't know if the next one would be called Encounter 12 or Encounter 1 again, because it's Encounter 1 of Adventure 2. Either way, it's not a tin of dice again, although they still look a bit like boring dice. We'll find out soon when you click the links to follow the videos. As usual, there'll be links up to follow the magazine or the series, but thanks for watching, hope to catch you soon.